Hey everybody, so a pretty interesting topic's been going around in the HEMA community recently, and that is just examining the fantasy idea of using a bow as a melee weapon and looking at how effective it would actually be, what its limitations would be, and what situations, if any, would you potentially use it in. So I thought it'd be quite an interesting topic, so I'm going to dig my teeth into it as well. I'm not going to go over too much old ground. There's been 3 videos already I've seen on the topic, so one by Skallagrim, one by Genie, and another by a guy called NUSensei, who he's not a part of the HEMA community, and I don't know how much attention he pays to us guys, if anything, but he does some really awesome archery tutorials, so check him out. I'll leave a link to his video down below as well. What situations would you use a bow and arrow as a melee weapon in? Very, very few. Like everyone else has said, they're shit melee weapons, and any attempt to optimize them for melee would make them worse at functioning as a bow and arrow. So yeah, they're not particularly effective. An arrow could be effective in certain situations. You certainly could get more than enough force to kill somebody with a war arrow. Perhaps if you had a broadhead or something like that, you could slash with it as well. So an arrow could work quite well as a melee weapon, but it's just not going to be as effective as pretty much any other melee weapon ever made. So an arrow, if you're in a really tight space and you've got no other options, could be pretty viable. So that about covers the arrow, so let's chuck that away. But yeah, when it comes to actually using it in a melee situation, I think it would come down to a case of you have really fucked up. You've fucked up and the person or animal trying to kill you has got so fucking close that you don't have any chance to turn and run or pull out another weapon or anything like that. You're either going to use your bow or arrow to attack with, or you are going to die. And your bow or arrow could get very damaged in the process and probably will be unable to be used for its intended purpose ever again. But it's far more important to stay alive. So in situations like that, and where it is going to be slightly better than nothing, you are going to use it. So assuming the enemy has got so close that you haven't got time to do anything else, what options do you have? So a bow, it's not going to kill them, it's not going to knock them out or break any bones or anything like that, but I don't think that makes it completely useless. What I'd be using a bow for is to buy myself enough time or to get myself into the place where I can bring my other skills into the equation instead. So one example is perhaps the enemy's trying to cut me in the neck there. I could use the bow to block while closing in and then bring my grappling into the equation, suplex them, stamp on their face, shove a dagger in between their eyes or whatever. You're in a better chance of survival if you've actually managed to close into grappling range. Or you could block and then bring a dagger in straight away like that if you have one available. Whereas if you didn't, you simply wouldn't have enough range. But I think a bow could potentially be quite good for parrying. Skallagrim disagrees. So first thing he says that you don't want to damage your bow. And I think if you're in a situation where you have to use your bow, you're simply not going to be concerned about that. So that I don't see as an issue. You're not going to be using a bow voluntarily, you're going to be using it because you absolutely fucking have to. And he also thinks you're simply not going to be able to take away enough force from the attack. I completely disagree with him at this stage. I would like to try all these ideas out at some point, so perhaps I'll do that in a future video. But you can move your arm up and down, you can try and block it with a strong, and if you punch into it especially, I think you're likely going to take all of the energy out of the attack, but even if you don't, you're going to take out enough to save your life. At least that's what I'm suspecting at the moment. So yeah, that's one way. You can just use it to block or parry while closing in and do something from there. That's not the option I would choose. Instead, I'd simply be using the bow to give myself a bit more time so I can do something else. So I could either, so they're coming at me, they're trying to attack, and I can either block or I can smack them first, and then use that to give myself enough time to get another weapon out. And as I'm whacking or parrying, I'm trying to gain some extra distance. So I'd use the bow just to give myself enough time to actually get a sword out. And from here, I think you've got a few different options. So first thing, you could drop the bow and then just have your hand free for grappling if it comes to it. And yeah, it's an option, but I wouldn't choose that. I think if you're in a situation where you're going to be able to grapple, you could simply drop the bow on the way in and then grapple from there instead. The other option, and this is a personal favourite of mine, is you could throw the bow in their face, and hopefully that's going to distract them enough that you're able to bring your sword into play. So that could work, and I think especially against somebody with a longer weapon, so perhaps they've got a long sword or maybe some form of polearm. That could be your best option, even if it only has a 40% chance of working. If they've got that much more reach than you, the chance of you winning without doing that, I think, is very, very slim. So against a longer weapon, I think that's the option I'd be going for. If they had an equivalent sword to me, I'd simply use the bow as an additional line of defence. So even if it fails, I mean, I've got it there. It's better than nothing, and you know, I would have died without it. So it's not really any detriment having it there. So I use it as an additional line of defence, and then just use the sword as if I'm using a one-handed sword, and pretty much forget this is here, unless I happen to see a blade coming this direction, and then try to just whack it out the way like that. So that, I think, is what I do. I wouldn't have it out front like you would with a lot of shield styles. And incidentally, there is an African martial art which uses a stick with some cloth covering the hand as a very cheap way of training shield usage. I've forgotten what it's called, but yeah, that kind of shows that a stick can work quite well as a shield with a centre grip. But yeah, it's not going to be reliable enough. I prefer to have extra reach with this arm and just use this as an extra line of defence. As a quick addendum, I'd like to reply to NUSensei's reply to me on his video. I didn't get the notification for this, so yeah, thanks YouTube. But I explained this stance of having the bow in the offhand, and NUSensei said that he preferred the versatility of just fighting with the sword in one hand, and that using the bow like this does leave the hand very, very vulnerable. So yeah, I'd like to reply to that. First off, versatility. Yeah, sure, you can hit that if you're clumsy, but if you're well trained, you can still attack from absolutely any angle, not getting in the way at all. You can still do absolutely any guard, and it's not getting in the way there. If you want to grapple, you can always let go of this when you absolutely have to and get the hand in, and I think it can offer additional techniques as well. So, for example, somebody's coming in to cut me at the head there. I simply step back, allow the bow to travel at that. I've then got this side of the body guarded there, and I end up in a position where I can stab underneath where I'm nice and protected, and I'm sure there's all sorts of other techniques I could do from there as well. So I think if anything, it does offer you additional versatility. If you're clumsy, yeah, sure, you can give you an opportunity to fuck up, but if you're well trained, it really doesn't reduce your options at all. As for the hand being vulnerable, absolutely, hand is very, very vulnerable in that position. I'll openly admit that. Personally, for me, I like to fight with my hand here so I can get it in and grapple very quickly. So for me, it's not leaving my hand any more vulnerable at all. But if you're one of these guys who likes to fight with the hand here, or here, or here, or wherever out the way, I really do think it's worth the trade-off to have all of that additional protection, basically blocking that whole side of your body there. So yeah, as a general rule, when it comes to using a one-handed sword, you're safer with something in the other hand, be it a parrying dagger, a buckler, a shield, a lantern, a cloak, whatever it happens to be. You're basically always safer having some sensible weapon in the other hand. The only times you really don't see the only times you really see someone using a one-handed sword by itself is, I guess, if they can't afford anything else, or if they're a civilian and they don't want to be over-encumbered. And even in cases like that, civilians will often have often had something in their sidearm, in their offhand as well. So yeah, I really do think that this, in the offhand, is better than having absolutely nothing. So yeah, that's about it. Arrow could be an effective weapon, but not as effective as pretty much any other melee weapon. And a bow, it wouldn't be an effective weapon by itself. However, it could end up helping you get enough time or get you into the place where you can bring some other skills into the equation instead. So thanks for watching, comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!